You're listening to Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM and coopradio.org. It's 5 o'clock, and it's Metis Matters Radio time!
The views expressed and opinions given by the individual host, myself, Derrick Whiteskycloud, and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of the CFRO 100.5 FM, your cooperative radio network, its affiliates, and or sponsors. Thank you guys for joining me on Metis Matters Radio on the CFRO 100.5 FM. And thank you for joining me all as well in the Facebook chat room and on YouTube. Actually, we're doing this program also on two locations at the same time, just because basically my computer was giving me some problems the last 3 or 4 days and going like, okay, what's happening now? So I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to just wing it and see what happens. So we are here. Thank you guys for being part of this, and I really appreciate you all here. And let's see here. What I'm going to do is, I'll just leave it as it is. Yeah. Okay. We are live right now for location, and also too, some of you may be watching or listening to our station on coopradio.org. Apparently we were understanding is that the internet went down, so they're just playing music through the station. So if you don't hear my show from the station, do not fret, because I'm here anyways. So you get to still see my good looking face in here in the chat room. So anyways, we are here, and we have a lot to talk about regarding what's going on all over Canada, and regarding our Métis community. And I wanted to share a lot of it with you. What is going on? Basically, last week, I was part of we did the 215 children vigil. We did actually in Langley. And I partook in it as one of the directors. I also recorded it on a video, and I made a video out of it. And yeah. Basically, what happened was when I was doing I guess when I finished doing the recording, I put it on Facebook, and apparently Facebook prevented me from sharing it because they wrote back to me and said to me that my video can do harm to others. No, it may not. It's actually telling the truth of what happened regarding the story that coming from the people from the territory, from the Kwantlen First Nation. They were sharing their stories, what's happening, and the women were singing, and it was very entertaining. And if you watch the video, it was to be in honor of the 215 children. So for some reason, I guess maybe some certain groups of people are preventing us from sharing what's going on in our communities. So if you're ever wanting to watch the video, if you're unable to see it on my Facebook page, you're more than welcome to request for it, and I can email it to you. You can email me at metismattersradio@gmail.com, and I'll send you the video, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's something that needs to be shared for all others across Canada, because we have been. I've been informed that there have been more children found, and across Canada, and it's not pretty. But for as numbers are concerned, I didn't expect to hear more numbers, but it's happening everywhere, folks. So. I want to explain to everybody out there, some of you guys may not know what a GPR is. That's called a ground penetrating radar. And it looks like a lawnmower in one way, but what it does, it's a radar that goes, and it radars the ground itself underneath, and they go back and forth to see what they can find. It had this particular ground penetrating GPR has been used a lot for looking for artifacts, say Egypt, and that sort of places. And it's been going on for years. I think they also did the GPR regarding Tesla. So when Tesla was talking about certain things that were underground that some people may have left behind, so they decided to use a GPR on the grounds where Tesla once used to have his location to do his free energy tower. It was kind of interesting. But anyways, to share with you the story. So basically, this is what's been used. People came up with the idea, because knowing that our Canadian government won't help us or stopped helping us, so they decided to go out of their way and get help from other people that have the equipment to go further with it. And I've noticed that it has done quite well. Now, what I want to bring up to is I want to thank all of the people that were involved with the Langley, the Lower Fraser Valley Aboriginal Society, which I'm also director of, but Katie Simpson and, Katie Pearson and Cecilia, these young ladies actually worked very hard to put this thing together in a matter of 4 days. And then our president, John Johnstone, and also Dave Stark, all those, and also their volunteers. I want to thank them. I also like to thank the Kwantlen First Nations that were there to represent their area, as well as the Katzie, Semi-Amu. So there's many other people that we want to acknowledge, as well as the people that lost their loved ones from the Kamloops region, regarding that as well, because they lost these children. And it's rather difficult, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. I know this. It's going to last a long time, because we have possibly over 150 residential schools, maybe more than that, across Canada, probably. And then you also remember too, folks, there are residential schools, there are day schools, as well as boarding schools. So there's 3 varieties, and they're going across the border from other boarding schools, residential schools, we would call it, and they're across the border now. And that has come up regarding the numbers there. Now, I had the piece of paper on my table, and somehow now all of a sudden it disappeared. Gee, I wonder what happened. But apparently, what I understand, and please, folks, don't mean to be disrespectful, but I want to let the people know out there that this is actually a very horrible thing that has happened to our people. Oh, I had it upside down this way. And so they found not just 215 children unmarked graves in Kamloops, but also in my area, in Brandon, Manitoba, they've already so far found 104. In Regina, Saskatchewan, they have found 38. Leastock, Saskatchewan, they found 35. And in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, they found 180 children unmarked graves. So now they're going across the border. So they're doing, so far, there have been over 572 plus, probably more as we speak. So it's ongoing. And like, again, the government has to say something. And I can't sit here and go, like, we apologize at what they done. No, it's not the apology. They should have, my understanding, what they should be doing is participating and helping out. You don't just sit back and go watch us do all the digging or watch us do all the groundwork. That should be paid for by our federal government to help find these children that have been missing for over, whether lengths of months of years, I should say lengths of years, that ones that never came home. So that's my own personal opinion, but I feel that maybe others may agree that the government should be paying for this as well. We should not be coming out of our pockets. It is the fault of our federal government did not. When I was part of the Truth and Reconciliation back in 2008, the government did promise us $8.4 million to help deal with this. And about 3/4 of it actually was removed after the 5 years. It was never all spent. It was after 5 years that Prime Minister Harper, when he was in government, removed that and placed that money in another location. Had nothing to do with us, but it should have stayed with us, and not just a 5-year limit. It should have been a 50-year limit or 50-year time, because I mean that's basically how much abuse it's been taken for over 50 years. But again, that's what our government does at times. So I'm not mad, but it needs to be resolved, right? There's truth and reconciliation, but there needs to be resolving of this issue. Now, like I said before, we did a vigil, and at the in Langley, it was a wonderful location that they used. That where I went, it was there was a sea of orange everywhere. Everyone was wearing the orange shirts, like my little guy here in the studio. And I myself, you'll see it, I'm sure. But again, I'm not going to stick with just what's here regarding the vigil. I just want to share the stories with you, what has happened since then. Now, what I want to bring up is another editorial. Let's see here. Let's talk about this one. Now, I'm sure you guys remember the column that I talked about. There was this fellow who was actually a retired judge in Winnipeg, and then really did some major damage, verbal damage, in his news column and in the Winnipeg Sun. And so there was another woman who actually decided to speak about what's going on. So hers, it's on the page of this Winnipeg Sun, and addressing questions about the Kamloops column. Now, the young lady's name is Tricia Toso, Toso. She said, I would like to take a moment to address the recent column by Brian Giesbrick. In the article, Giesbrick suggests that there may be nothing sinister in the discovery of the 215 bodies of Indigenous children at a former residential school, that these children might have died of natural causes. Now, there are a number of problems with this argument. First and foremost, it works to minimize the trauma Indigenous peoples of Canada have suffered as a result of colonialism and colonial policies, such as the residential school program. Now, this kind of trauma is not something to move on from. We do not ask that the families of murdered victims to just move on. Rather than, as a society, we have designed a justice system so that the perpetrator is appropriately punished and removed from society, and victims and their families are offered offered a sense of justice. The wrongdoing has been acknowledged and recognized and responded. By suggesting people's need to just move on from the murder of their children is tantamount now to saying that Indigenous peoples do not deserve justice and that their histories of trauma are not important. Secondly, Giesbrick's argument that many Indigenous people were dying of TB, influenza, and other illnesses does not acknowledge that these diseases were brought to the Americas by the Europeans. Are we to accept the death of millions of Indigenous peoples from European pathogens as natural or inevitable? And how does this mitigate the deaths of the children in residential schools? Are we to accept that the death of 215 children in the custody of the state and church as okay because the Indigenous people were already dying of European diseases? It is a shameful argument. Finally, Giesbrick's discussion on home children doesn't really help his argument. We are to understand because English culture and society allowed and supported the enslavement of children as well as institutionalized violence against children. That it was okay and that they did it to children in other cultures and countries. And really, since when did two wrongs make a right? Your choice to publish this article is regrettable and works to perpetuate the myths of Canadians telling themselves to avoid accountability and restitution. It is also inaccurate and gives a false narrative. Gives a false narrative. This is dangerous. Indigenous peoples of Canada have suffered from hundreds of years of European oppression and abuse and denial of these wrongs. And because of this, discrimination continues. And it's time to do better. It is time to tell the real story and stop lying to ourselves about what Indigenous peoples have suffered and lived through. It is time to express our support for the healing and sovereignty of Indigenous peoples and be accountable for the historical and present wrongs. Great article. Now, one thing I want to say, folks, because I'm from Manitoba, so I know what did go on. Along as far as I remember, there are a few kids that did have TB, but it wasn't all over the residential school. The odd child had one, but not everybody did. And as far as influenza and other illnesses, most of the time these children were starved. It was starvation. Even though the federal government actually has monies and the churches had monies to pay to keep these residential schools going. And if they didn't have the money, then why do you force the children to come to the residential schools? If there's no food there, at least the kids would have had their own food served to them, hunting, fishing, you name it, from their family, they would have survived. But what had happened was they couldn't survive because the priests and the nuns said, you can't leave. So in the meantime, they starved the children and they enslaved them. A lot of abuse. I'm telling you, not just abuse as in verbal abuse, physical abuse, to as far as rape, pillaging a child, even going as far as pregnancy. And it's been proved because many of the children had seen this happen. These are children that were part of that were survivors that actually would tell the story at the Truth and Reconciliation. So don't tell me I do not know what I'm talking about. I was there. I listened. I was there. So I don't hate them, but I didn't like what they did. Their philosophy of getting the red out of the child, their philosophy was to take everything that they believed was powerful that they were afraid of. The priests were so afraid of an Indigenous person. And they could beat the child all they want, and the child would just take it because they knew how to survive. And if that child did not give in their abuse from the priest and the nuns, they went as far as killing them or using them for other types of means of, you name it, they did it. So the thing is that I feel bad. I mean, another reason why I became a puppeteer, because I love working with kids. I'm an uncle for every kid that I meet, but even the adults are big kids as well. And I use these characters for a reason, because puppets are important. You know, a few years back in 2015, I actually was given an award from the city of Surrey, and their organization was called Seeds. And they gave me an award called an Amber Award as the very first Métis puppeteer in Surrey, British Columbia, because they loved what I did by entertaining the children. And also to them, that's how they loved watching me entertain the kids and people. So I received this award. It's appreciative, but the thing is that I did it for the kids. I didn't do it for everybody. I didn't do it to get an award. I did it because I love doing what I'm doing. I love to entertain. I've been doing radio for many, many years. You know, and this is what I do. I love to work with kids, and there are some great people in this chat room that know who I am and know that I've been doing this for a long time. I like to help a lot of people out. That's just the way it is. The thing is that we need to call out our government to actually, like I said, financially pay for the investigations. They should be paying for it, not making or telling our First Nations people that we have to get funding so we can do all this research to find our missing children. That's not cool. That really isn't cool. So let's see here. Why is this doing this? This is funny. My screen is going nuts. Okay. The Langley Advanced Times is where we did the vigil last week, and there was a man, is almost, same age as me. His name is Jack Kruger. It says, maybe this time they will listen. Survivors share stories from BC residential school. Jack Kruger, living in the Silex territory, wasn't surprised by the news of 215 children's remains found on the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian residential schools. This article contains a personal account of the abuse endured or witnessed by children at residential school that may be triggering. It mentions suicide and violence against children, including sexual, physical, mental, emotional abuse. When Jack Kruger, residential school survivor living in Silex territory, heard the news about the children's remains found on the grounds of former Kamloops Indian residential school, and he says that he wasn't surprised. We always said that they were there, says Jack. Maybe this time they will listen. On May the 27th, Cookbee 7 Chief Roseanne Casimir of the Tk'emlúps, I always mess this up, Tk'emlúps Dis Simk, announced that ground-penetrating radar had revealed the remains of 215 children in their home community on the former grounds of the KIRS, the church-run residential school. The Simk is a final resting place of these children, says Casimir in a statement. The KIRS formed part of a broader system run by the federal government and the church organizations between 1874 and 1996. Now, the system was designed to eliminate indigenous cultures and, through assimilation, cause indigenous peoples to cease to exist, according to the Indian Residential School History and the Dialogue Center at the University of British Columbia. An estimated established 150,000 plus First Nations, Metis, and Inuit children were removed from their families, homes, languages, and lands and placed into these institutions. On the fall morning in 1956, Jack says a police officer and the priest arrived on the doorstep to escort him to a train station where he boarded a train, and when he got off, he says that he was transported by a cattle truck to residential school. Cattle truck. I was told that they were sending me to school, and I didn't know what the school was. They said it was a good place, says Jack, who is a Penticton Indian band member. Jack was 6 years of age at the time, and he was sent to St. Eugene's Mission Residential School, which was located just north of the city of Cranbrook in the southeastern British Columbia, along with his two nieces. Like KRS, St. Eugene's was run by the Catholic Church until the federal government took it over in 1969, shutting it down a year later. According to the IRSHDC, the police told my parents, "Your child has to go." My dad had no experience of what residential school was like, so he sent me, Jack tells Indigen News. In 1920, the Indian Act was amended to make it compulsory for Indigenous children at ages 7 to 15 to attend either a day school, or residential school. According to an Indian Affairs, an annual report for that year, we were taken in by a train against our will, he says. When I arrived, I got backhanded for speaking my language. Jack tells Indigen News that he quickly learned not to speak Nixlixin, the Syilx language he spoke regularly before he was taken from his family. Because children were regularly punished for speaking their language, they told me it was the devil's tongue. Jack says that the experienced physical and the mental abuse and witnessed sexual abuse while at St. Eugene's. 2 or 3 times a night, a priest or a nun would come into the children's dorms and sexually abuse them in front of the rest, he says. Let this be a lesson to you. God is going to cleanse your soul, Jack remembers hearing the priest saying before abusing the children. After seeing that every night, I didn't even ever want to speak my language again, he says. I wouldn't let my dad or any other elder talk to me in Okanagan. So they had to talk to me in English. I did that for 40 years. The litany of violent abuses against Indigenous children is so-called residential schools has been thoroughly documented by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But in its final report, in some cases, children were heavily beaten or confined in cells or punishment rooms. I was in the punishment room. My best friend in residential school hung himself because of the sexual abuse he experienced, Jack says. I went after the priest for sexually abusing my friend. After a punishment for attacking the priest, Jack says that he was thrown into a little storage room full of broken equipment, physically abused by the priest, and kept there for 2 weeks without food or water. I've seen many residential school survivors were thrown down the stairs, hung by our ears, he says. They would give us a needle and put drugs into us to see how it worked. It became normal to us, the trauma. Residential schools were in operation for more than a century, and many Indigenous children died there because many records were destroyed. It's hard to say exactly how many. According to the TRC's final report, until the 1950s, Indigenous children in these institutions died at a far higher rate than the school-age children in the general population. While Jack was attending St. Eugene's, he noticed classmates starting to disappear regularly. He knew some of them were dead, Jack says, especially after 2 days, 3 days. You're always guaranteed that person would never come back. He says he and other students were suspicious about the neighboring pig farm, which they were told not to go around. At night, we would see the priests go to the farm, and then they knew the priests were feeding the pigs the children. He says they watched them behind the trees. So if we went over there, he would be over there, and we were not allowed to in and then that area, he says. One night, Jack recalls, he was playing in the furnace room When he heard voices, I peeked around the corner and the priest was yelling at 2 boys to throw that little child's body in the furnace. He said that they had to do that because the child had the devil in him. He said that burning them up would clear their soul so the child would be able to go to heaven. It seemed like the priest always had a story to tell. It was also known for the priest to throw the children into the river beside the residential school. Jack says that he is speaking out about his experience because he wants people to understand that others are still missing. The reason I'm telling the story is I want the children and their spirits to go back to the Creator and not to be lost out there. On Easter, after spending 2 years in St. Eugene's, Jack remembers mustering up the courage to tell his father what was truly going on. He learned to be quiet. I came back for Christmas one year and I didn't say nothing to my parents and wanted to, but you were scared of the priests. He says that he was brainwashed and had no self-confidence or recollection of who he was. He says it wasn't until late 1980 when he became interested in learning the language and reconnecting with his identity as a Syilx Okanagan man. I think Native spirituality helped me more than I started to go back into ceremonies, he said. He also acknowledges his wife, Joanne, and their 4 children have supported him throughout his healing journey. And Joanne helped a lot too, telling me to be strong and telling me to not let the priest win. And my kids helped too. In their own way, he says, I think it's a family that really helped. Jack tells the Indigenous News that he wants everyone to know the stories that he has about St. Eugene's. It is not about making anyone feel guilty or to make anyone feel attacked or bad. All I want to do is to let the truth be known. Some of the horrors that happened. The thing I want people to realize is that their religion is good, but just that the human beings that carried the robe, black robe, they were the ones that were wrong and not the religion. So let's not attack on anybody. And that's his writings. So now you guys know that it's pretty sick that this guy, how abused he was. My situation in Brandon, they locked me up. They put me in a room, locked me up, and where all I could see is this little tiny window in the back, and all I could see is a field of wheat. And it was hot in that room, absolutely hot. I was not allowed to move off the chair. It was a wooden chair. And if I did move, they put a beating on me. So I don't know what happened. I took the courage to fight back, and I told my dad. And my father took me out of the school, but he beat up the priest first, and then took me away, took me home. So we're going to go into break, folks, and I think this is really important to share this song with you because a good friend of ours, Winston Whitney, is one of the most kindest people. He actually has wonderful music he's been sharing. So this is Winston Whitney. The song is Masecho. CFRO 100.5 FM.
Honey. Honey!
I really wanted a coffee.
Where are you? You've been there forever.
Come on. You know what? You think you're the boss.
But I'm the boss here. Derrick will be right back after he gets my coffee.
Radio Vancouver, local and not so local music. A music show that tells you where and when you can see and hear live music. With band dates, live musical guests, and a few surprises too. Radio Vancouver, Wednesdays, 3:30 to 5. It doesn't just play music and go home, it's out there, absorbing it. Experience Vancouver on Facebook at facebook.com/Vancouver. Radio Vancouver, Wednesdays, 3:30 to 5 p.m. on Co-op Radio. It's
If you want to listen to us anywhere you travel, you can go into your Google Play Store and then download the Radio Player Canada app, and you can listen to your favorite radio station, Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM.
Vancouver Cooperative Radio is an innovative, non-profit community radio station with a mission to produce creative and engaging programming for communities whose voices are underrepresented in the mainstream media. We need your financial support to help us achieve this mission. By donating today, you will help us to continue providing access to training and equipment for over 300 volunteers who produce 140 hours of original programming in over 10 languages. Since 1975, we've celebrated the rich cultural diversity of the Greater Vancouver area through our arts, music, and spoken word programming. Please support alternative community-based radio. You can donate today by visiting coopradio.org or calling 604-684-8494. That's 604-684-8494.
We are back. This is JJ LaValle, Jimmy's Breakdown. And that story relates to his grandfather in honor of him, Jimmy LaValle. Yeah. And JJ doesn't live too far from me. He's just up the road towards Cloverdale. So we're back. And we have more to share with you folks before we call this a great show. There is another editorial I want to share with you, and it's all to do with the there's columns regarding the Edmonton Journal. This is a systemic racism in action. Métis Nation of Alberta suing the UCP government over refusal to discuss consultation policy. So the Métis Nation of Alberta, MNA, is taking the province to court for refusing to negotiate a consultation policy framework. For years, the MNA has been working with the province on how best to consult with Métis on matters of such as a provincial resource development. Discussions began in 2014. A draft policy was agreed upon in 2018, and with the former NDP-led government. However, the MNA claim in an 83-page lawsuit that the United Conservative Party went silent, and following the 2019 election, and decided to cancel negotiations months later without warning. The MNA president, Audrey Portois, on Monday said the government has ignored their request to continue working on the policy and is treating the Métis Nation as second-class Indigenous people, not the first. This is systemic racism in action, she said. After a half a decade of work, we are in worse position than when we started. This government's action sent a clear message to the Indigenous people that Alberta won't negotiate in good faith, and if you want your rights respected, you're better off protesting or blockading or going to court, because Alberta doesn't appear to be trusted. Adrian South, press secretary for the Indigenous Relations Minister, Rick Wilson, said in an email that they are aware of the lawsuit, but it would be inappropriate to comment as a matter is before the courts. Gee, I wonder why. Now, Alberta's government values its relationship with the Métis as shown by our support of affordable housing projects, cultural outreach for Métis Crossing, ongoing supports during the pandemic, and continuous engagement with the Alberta's Métis peoples since forming government in 2019, South said. Now, when asked in question period why the government was not working on a policy, Premier Jason Kenney said consultation continues on a broader range of issues, and he looks forward to working with the Métis Nation and individual settlements. At any given time, there are hundreds of pieces of litigation between Indigenous communities and the Crown, both federal and provincial, that should not impair us from a constructive and respectable, I don't know why they're saying that, relationship. Adding that the province has worked with Métis communities to set up outreach clinics for vaccines. Well, of course, vaccines, nothing more. According to the lawsuit, A briefing note was provided to Wilson in August 2019 with the recommendation to assess consultations with Métis on a case-by-case basis, with the option to revisit the policy negotiations in the future. MNA's lawsuit is asking for courts to intervene by quashing the decision. The MNA is also asking for government to recognize that it had a duty to negotiate and the minister had breached that duty. A 2-day hearing is scheduled to start on Thursday. Portois has said that Métis Nation is the only Indigenous people in Alberta whose rights are not protected by a consultation policy. Alberta deliberates endlessly on whether to consult with the Métis communities using a case-by-case approach that is tangled in red tape, and the Alberta's own bureaucrats have admitted does not work. Now, she said on June the 17th, we will ask the court to force Alberta to do the right thing and respect the rule of law and return to the negotiation table. NDP leader Rachel Notley said a Métis consultation policy is crucial for the province's future in order for Alberta's lands and resources and people to be protected. A former policy would help us to enshrine a process for new projects, she said, and it would allow the government to bring willing partners to table to determine what is best for this province, and it would provide industry with transparency and predictability on consultation requirements. So now you know. So let's see here. I got a couple more columns, but not sure which one to hit for. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's important to do this one here. Now, this one here is Saskatchewan. Like I said before, we're hitting all the provinces right now. Speaking with one voice, McCallum gets a mandate to unify Métis governance. Okay. So the runner-up, Clement Charchet, concedes and encourages more community involvement in the Métis politics. Now, the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan's newly re-elected president, Glenn McCallum, says that he plans to hit the ground running to finish the nation-building project that started 4 years ago. The election came down to a vote of confidence in McCallum's administration that has been working to form the MNS into a more centralized and structured government. And the win gives McCallum a mandate to continue in that direction. A lot of things excite me when I think about how we can move the files of our Métis people and the First Nations forward. McCallum told the Prince Albert Daily Herald, I feel better. I feel a lot lighter knowing that our people believe that there is a better way that we can develop processes and engage with governments. That's what makes me happy. Now, this year's election was significant because it's the first time that Métis were required to have a citizenship card in order to vote. Candidates disagreed on how to move forward after signing agreements with the federal government that brought in more funding. The direction of the Métis governance system citizenship approach to land claims and consultation policies with industry were hotly debated. Clement Charchet concedes to McCallum and encourages Métis people to register with Nation. The runner-up, Clement Charchet, who is also the president of the Métis National Council, challenged the citizenship requirement in court, arguing that a person's right to vote and receive benefits should be decided by the community consensus as it has in the past. The Court of Queen's Bench ruled in favor of the MNS. Charchet said the election was ultimately unfair to those who wanted to vote that couldn't under the new rules. There were hundreds of people that were turned away that could not vote. It just was very unfair for people not being able to vote, Charchet said. There should have been at least a phase-in period where people would have had time to sign up for cards. It was unfair in that respect, and it did defranchise a lot of people. He now says it's important for as many Métis to sign up as possible so that the next election will include more voters, and he hopes that more youth and elders will get involved in Métis politics. I would hope that the Métis people in Saskatchewan become more engaged in their government, and more we're getting our rights recognized in terms of negotiations, and land could be one of those. But certainly for programs, services, and post-COVID recovery. There is going to be a substantial amount of money made available to Indigenous peoples, including the Métis Nation. It's important that they're a part of this process, and it's important that they become engaged in the electoral process as well. He said that signing up will also qualify Métis in Saskatchewan for gains in health and wellness coverage, and expected to come soon, come out of negotiations with the federal Liberals. Now, it would be good to be, it would be good to show governments that the Métis in Saskatchewan are serious about their rights. One way of doing that is by registering with the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan and supporting it. Regardless of who the president is, support it, because it is our government. Show that the aspirations of the past are still the aspirations today, and that we want all to move forward. McCallum said also he's proud of a building that verified registry of citizens, because that builds legitimacy. Previous elections were questionable because anyone could vote by signing a declaration that they are Métis with no proof, he said. This is the first time that we've ever legitimized that registry in regards to having a citizenship card to be eligible to vote. I'm very satisfied with that, because the people really believed and are excited again to be able to be part of the Métis Nation. Our elections have always been quite a question in regards to self-declaration and buying votes, and the list goes on. Those days are gone. They're done. McCallum said election results show this nation-building model is what citizens want. Having a government-to-government relationship with federal and provincial leaders is needed to continue building on gains over the past 4 years, he said. McCallum said that the MNS needs a constitutional reform, and he's working on to get the point where the province and the courts are less involved in the settling with disputes. Therefore, they are not giving us directions so as to what they should do. We give ourselves direction at our legislative assembly, McCallum said. Over the past 4 years, McCallum plans to continue in the direction that he started 4 years ago, and he said more accountability and transparency from the MNS has already started to pay off. Now that we've restored Canada's funding to MNS, we've created a self-governing model that we're following through with, and we will continue supporting our locals and build a safe and secure growing citizenship registry, and we'll keep addressing the issues. And there you go. There's more to talk about. If you want to find that column, folks, it's actually called the Daily Herald, the Prince Albert Daily Herald. And it's called Speaking with One Voice. McCallum gets a mandate to unify Métis governments. So there you go. Pretty good. Not too bad of a column. So anyways, oh my goodness, I think it's time to go. I'm so sorry. This whole thing goes so fast, so quick. So we're going to go out with Dallas Boyer and Big John McNeil. And you guys take good care of each other. And we'll talk to you guys next week. And enjoy Métis Matters Radio. And if you guys wanted to follow some of the old recordings, you can always go to our station, coopradio.org, and look for Métis Matters Radio. We'll see you guys later. If you wanted to send me any more information about what's going on in the community, send it to me on métismattersradio@gmail.com. Kwapi Tanina.